She moved in to help after my knee surgery, made my bed, labeled my pills, brought me tea every morning, smiling, watching me sip. Then the headaches started, the dizzy spells, the nights I woke up sweating. Recovery, she said. Just drink your tea. Before dawn one Wednesday, I went to take out the trash and saw something that made my hands shake. I didn't scream, I paid attention. And later that day, my neighbor showed me a photo that told me I wasn't imagining any of it. Before I show you what was in that trash and the picture that changed everything, tap subscribe, tell me where you're watching from, and please share this with one person you love, because this can happen to anyone. Now let's get into it. I always told myself I wouldn't be one of those old women who let their pride get in the way of common sense. When the doctor said I needed minor surgery on my left knee, I took it in stride. Booked the appointment, arranged my time off from church, and figured I'd manage recovery just fine in my own home. The same brick house my late husband Ray and I built with our bare hands nearly 4 decades ago. Every corner of that home held a memory, a laugh, or a scar. And after all these years, it was still just me and God holding down the fort. I knew where every creaky board was, where the morning light fell just right across the dining room table, and which cabinet still squeaked no matter how much oil I rubbed into the hinge. That house wasn't just a structure. It was stitched into my bones. Andre, my only son, was concerned, of course. He offered to fly back from wherever his route had him that week, but I told him not to bother. He had a job to do. He had Monique. Monique was the one who came up with the idea. "Mama Lillian, what if I come stay with you for a couple weeks?" she said over speakerphone one night. "Just until you're back on your feet. You won't have to lift a finger." At first, I was hesitant. Not because I disliked Monique. She was always sweet to my face, always brought me a Mother's Day card, always wore something nice to church when they visited, but there was something about her that I could never quite place. She was polished, a little too perfect, like she rehearsed her kindness in the mirror. She had the kind of smile that didn't always reach her eyes. Still, I couldn't fault her for offering help, and truth be told, I didn't have many people left who offered. And maybe, just maybe, it would be nice to have some company. So I said yes. She moved in on a Sunday just 3 days before my surgery, brought 2 suitcases, her blender, and a rolling makeup caddy that barely fit through the front door. Said she'd work remotely while helping around the house. I nodded and smiled, trying not to feel displaced in my own living room as she rearranged throw pillows and swapped out my lemon-scented candle for some lavender vanilla thing that gave me a headache. She made herself at home quickly. A little too quickly, if I'm being honest. Within the first 2 hours, she'd cleared a shelf in the pantry for her wellness snacks, taken over the hall bathroom with 10 different serums, and asked if I minded if she used the good dishes for her clean eating meals. I said nothing. I was tired. My knee was already starting to ache. To her credit, she was attentive in the beginning. When I got home from the hospital, she had fluffed the pillows in the guest room, which she'd claimed for herself, and set me up in the master, where I could rest without climbing stairs. She made soup from a box, but she added parsley like it was gourmet. She laid out my meds in a tidy little pill organizer and labeled each row with my name in glitter pen. She even brought me a mug of hot tea every morning, steeped in one of those little mesh infusers with dried leaves and orange peels floating in it. It was thoughtful, more than thoughtful, Phil. It felt personal. "It's herbal," she said the first time, brushing a strand of her straightened hair behind her ear. "Good for circulation. Helps with swelling." I smiled, touched by the gesture. It even tasted good. Earthy, slightly bitter, but with a hint of something floral. Maybe hibiscus. She brought it without fail every morning, just as the sun peeked through the lace curtains and the robins outside started fussing in the dogwood tree. The first week was smooth. She kept the house running, managed her Zoom calls from the dining table, even helped me wash my hair over the sink like a real nurse. Andre called in every other night, checking in with a tired voice and always the same words. "Hope Monique's taking good care of you, Ma." She was, until she wasn't. It started small. I'd ask for my heating pad and she'd say, "It's upstairs, Mama, just rest instead." Or I'd mention wanting to go sit on the porch and she'd glance at her watch. "Maybe tomorrow. Let's not overdo it." Then she started answering my phone when it rang, just once or twice, saying it startled me awake. But she never handed it over after. One time I asked if anyone had called, and she paused a moment too long before saying, "Just spam. Don't worry about it." She reorganized my kitchen for efficiency and moved my cane basket to a spot I couldn't reach without calling her. She changed my TV settings to her streaming account and said the volume was too high when I tried to watch my afternoon soaps. I hadn't realized how quiet the house had gotten until I caught myself straining to hear my own thoughts. She started bringing the tea before I even woke up. I'd opened my eyes, and there she was, smiling, holding the cup like a ritual. It was always hot, always in the same mug, always just a little too bitter if I didn't stir it. Bitter has a way of hiding in plain sight. The tea kept coming, every single morning, steaming hot right by my nightstand, and every morning Monique would stand there, arms crossed, one foot bouncing, and watch me sip. She'd tilt her head and ask, "Feeling okay today?" Like she needed to make sure I finished every drop. Sometimes she'd offer to bring a second cup if I didn't drink fast enough. "It's good for your joints," she'd say. "We want you mobile again soon." One time, I caught her glancing at the bottom of the empty mug like she was checking to see if anything was left. I didn't think much of it. Not then. I told myself it was just attentiveness, the way some women hover when they're trying too hard to be liked. I'd been around enough fake kindness in my day to recognize it, but this felt different. Still, I said nothing. But then came the nights. I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up soaked in sweat, heart pounding. My knees throbbed like they were filled with glass. My fingertips tingled. I blamed it on the surgery, on age, and on the weather. But soon, I started feeling strange, off, like my own body wasn't mine anymore. And by then, it might have been too late. I started keeping track of the symptoms in my head, like a silent ledger I didn't dare speak aloud. It wasn't just one thing, not at first. It was little moments that piled up until they stopped feeling like coincidences. My headaches started the second week, dull at first, a throb behind my eyes that I chalked up to recovery stress. But then came the dizziness. I'd stand up too quickly and the room would tilt, colors swimming like watercolors left in the rain. Once I gripped the hallway wall so hard I chipped the paint. Monique always had an explanation ready. "You're probably dehydrated." Or, "That's just your body adjusting to the meds." She'd frown with concern, tilt her head and bring me a cool cloth for my forehead. But her eyes never quite matched her voice, and the tea never stopped coming. I thought maybe it was me. Maybe I was being ungrateful. Here she was, giving up her routine, living in my house, helping me recover. And I was sitting in bed thinking maybe she wasn't being honest. That kind of guilt seeps into your bones if you let it. I tried to push the doubts down, but then came the heart flutters. They didn't feel like panic. They came when I was calm, watching the news, folding a blanket, flipping through my Bible. My heart would stutter once, twice, then race. I'd hold my chest and sit still until it passed. When I mentioned it, Monique brushed it off again. "Menopause flashbacks," she said with a smirk. "You'd be surprised how long those linger." I stared at her. I hadn't had hot flashes since Clinton was in office. That night, I didn't finish the tea. I let it sit on the nightstand while she bustled around with her laptop, pretending not to notice. When she left the room, I sniffed it. Nothing odd, no strong smell, no oily surface, just that same faintly floral, bitter scent. I poured it out in the bathroom sink. The next morning, she was back, smiling, tea in hand. "You didn't drink all of yesterday's," she said lightly, like it didn't matter. "I wasn't feeling great," I replied. Didn't want to upset my stomach. She nodded, but didn't press. Still, I noticed her watching more closely that day. She hovered when I walked, offered to take over tasks I didn't need help with. I asked if she was going out at one point, just making conversation, and she said no. But later that afternoon, I caught a glimpse of her coming back from somewhere. She didn't say where. That's when I started leaving little traps for myself, ways to track what she was doing when I wasn't looking. I placed a piece of Scotch tape on my pill organizer to see if it moved. I counted the number of tea bags left in the drawer. I put a sticky note in my bedroom doorframe and saw it stuck to the hallway floor the next morning. I was being watched, or managed, or both. Andre still called, but always in the late evenings, always when Monique was nearby. I tried to tell him gently, hinting without accusing. "She's been hovering a lot," I said once. "Won't even let me get the mail." He chuckled. "She's just looking out for you, Ma. You're not used to being fussed over. Let her help." Easy for him to say. He wasn't here. He didn't hear the way her tone shifted when she thought I wasn't listening. He didn't see how fast she snatched the teacup away once I set it down, like it had secrets it didn't want to spill. On the 4th day of that week, I woke up before dawn, couldn't sleep. My chest felt heavy, not painful, just off. I shuffled to the window, sat in my recliner, and stared into the streetlight haze. And that's when I saw her, Monique, out front in her robe, taking the trash to the curb. Only it wasn't trash day, not even close. Some mornings tell on people. She carried a small white bag tied tight. She looked over her shoulder twice before tossing it into the neighbor's bin. She didn't see me watching. I leaned back slowly, heart pounding. My breath caught. It felt like a scene out of a show, one of those crime dramas where the wife smiles sweetly until someone ends up 6 feet under. I couldn't prove anything yet, but my body was telling me what my heart wouldn't say out loud. Something wasn't right. The next day, I forced myself out of bed before she could come in. I limped past the kitchen, made my way to the trash outside. Nothing obvious, just the normal mix of boxes and wrappers. But something about it felt staged, too clean, too arranged, like someone had scrubbed away the trail. She handed me tea before I even sat down. "You should have waited. You're not supposed to be up on your feet yet." "I needed some air," I said. She watched me drink again. She always did, arms crossed, head tilted. It was her morning ritual, like she couldn't start her day until I'd swallowed something she'd prepared. That night, I got out a mason jar. I waited until she left the room, then poured the tea inside and sealed the lid. I placed it in the back of my closet, behind a box of old scarves. The next morning, I did it again, and the next. Each night, I labeled the jar with a date. I pressed the lids tight. Sealed, dated, untouched. So nobody could say I imagined it. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but my body kept getting weaker, and my instincts kept getting louder. And by then, I'd learned to stop ignoring them. It was a Wednesday morning. Not a birthday, not a holiday, just a regular middle-of-the-week day that started out quiet enough to pass for normal, until I got out of bed with a mission. I didn't have a plan yet, just a gut feeling. Something told me I needed to get to the trash before Monique did. It was barely 6. The sky was still dusky, not yet bright, and the morning air slipped through the window cracks with a chill that made my knees ache a little more than usual. But I pulled myself out of bed. I moved slow, careful not to creak the floorboards in the hall. I didn't want her to hear me up. Not yet. Outside, the porch light flickered weakly as I opened the back door. I had my robe tied tight, slippers on, and a plastic bag in hand to look casual. Just another old woman taking out her morning trash. Only this time, I wasn't there to drop anything off. I was digging. The can was already halfway full, which struck me as strange since it had just been emptied Monday. I lifted the lid, heart thudding, and began shifting through the layers carefully. And that's when I saw it. A cardboard box, not large, not flashy, but unmistakable. Bright red print with a black border, illustration of a rat in the corner, X'd out in bold ink. Rat poison, empty. The label didn't shout, but my body did. The kind that doesn't belong in a house like mine, where no one's seen a mouse in over a decade. I froze. My stomach dropped like it had fallen through the porch floor, and my fingers went numb for a moment as I stared, the wind brushing my cheek like cold breath. I hadn't bought this. I didn't even know where it was sold. And it was in my trash. Suddenly, every odd taste in the tea came rushing back. Every headache, every dizzy spell, the racing heart, the weakness, the quiet insistence Monique always had. Drink up, it's good for you. Just one more sip. My hands began to shake. Not from the cold this time, but I knew, deep down, like the certainty of God's voice in a silent church, that this wasn't in my head. I wasn't imagining things. I closed the lid slowly, careful not to let it slam. The box was still inside, half tucked under a paper towel roll and some of Monique's protein bar wrappers. I memorized its position. I didn't dare touch it. Not yet. But I needed proof. Something I could point to. When I turned around, Monique was standing in the kitchen window, silhouette backlit by the ceiling light, cup in her hand. Tea, probably. Maybe my tea. I didn't let on. I raised a hand and waved. She smiled and waved back. Predators relax when prey pretends to graze. I walked inside like everything was fine. Up early, she said when I stepped through the door. Couldn't sleep, I replied, brushing past her. Thought I'd get some air. She held up a mug. I made your tea already. It's cooling a little. I nodded and took it without looking at her. My hand was steady, but my pulse was roaring in my ears. She followed me to the table like she always did, sat across from me, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. But I could feel her eyes, watching, measuring, waiting. I brought the cup to my lips, let the rim touch, then set it back down. She didn't flinch, but I could sense a slight stiffness in her smile, like she was trying too hard. I forced a smile of my own. After breakfast, or what passed for it, I excused myself to the bedroom, took the tea with me. Behind my closet box, I added another jar, poured slowly, sealed it tight, labeled it with a fresh piece of tape. Wed AM, found poison box. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time after that, hands on my lap, staring at nothing. Everything inside me wanted to scream, to call Andre, to storm into the kitchen and shove that box in her face. But if there was one thing I'd learned in 67 years of life, growing up black in the South, raising a boy on my own, surviving heartbreak and illness and grief, it's this. Sometimes silence is stronger than shouting, and this war, it would be won in silence first. That night, she brought me a different mug, said it was a stronger blend, said it would help me sleep better. I nodded, took the cup, pretended to sip, and when she turned away, phone ringing in the other room, I poured that new blend straight into jar number 5. Then I reached for my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. My neighbor, Sharon Price. I hadn't spoken to Sharon Price in months, not out of bitterness or anything petty, just life. She worked from home now, some kind of freelance marketing thing she did on 2 monitors with her cat perched on one. Ever since her husband passed 2 years ago, she kept mostly to herself, watered her plants, walked twice a day, watched the neighborhood like it was her job. That morning, I sat at the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand. My fingers hovered over her contact for a good minute. I'd written the date on the latest mason jar label, the one from last night's stronger blend, and the sight of it felt like a silent alarm bell I couldn't ignore anymore. When she picked up, her voice was groggy. "Lillian? Sorry, baby, I know it's early." No, is everything okay?" I didn't know how to answer that, not directly. "I need a favor," I said, "and I need you to keep it between us." There was a pause, a breath. Then, "Of course. You want me to come over?" We met outside. I didn't want Monique overhearing anything, and Sharon didn't ask questions. She just grabbed her hoodie and slipped through the gate with a mug of coffee in hand. Her hair was still in rollers. I told her everything. Quietly, steady, no dramatics, just the facts. The tea, the jars, the box of poison in the trash, the odd taste, the dizziness, the jars hidden behind scarves, the labels. When I was done, Sharon didn't blink. She sipped her coffee, nodded once, and said, "I knew something was off." "You did?" She pointed at my driveway. "She's been taking your trash out at weird hours, not just trash day. sometimes 5:30 in the morning, and she always carries 2 bags, but only one goes in your bin. The other one, she walks down to the corner house, drops it in their barrel like she's doing them a favor. I stared at her. My mouth went dry. She ever mention meeting people in the street? Sharon asked. Not to me. Well, twice now I've seen her talking to some guy from a silver sedan. Same man both times. Short, stocky. She leans into the window, they talk, and she walks away with a small box or envelope. I felt a chill run up my back. Sharon looked at me and said, "You want me to start taking pictures?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. And that was the beginning of our quiet little alliance. Sharon, bless her soul, turned into a regular gumshoe. She started taking her morning walks with her phone camera ready, walked past the house slowly, paused by the gate pretending to fix her shoelace, took photos of every time Monique dragged a trash bag out early. Not just photos, timestamps and notes. Meanwhile, I kept collecting tea every morning. Sip, pretend, pour, seal. I now had 8 jars. I bought a small lockbox off Amazon and hid it under the floorboard in the back closet. Sharon helped me install it while Monique was out grocery shopping. We both worked like 2 women on a mission, pausing to laugh once when Sharon said, "Who knew we'd be running a sting operation in our pajamas?" But there was nothing funny about what we were uncovering. That weekend, Sharon knocked on my window in the middle of the night, 2:16 a.m. I checked. Clocks don't lie. People do. She had a photo, Monique, at the trunk of that silver sedan, this time taking something out, a white packet, unlabeled. She showed me the timestamp. We added it to the file. I'd started calling it the file in my head, a manila folder tucked in the back of my Bible drawer with printouts of the Poison brand, screenshots from the pharmacy website, printed photos from Sharon's phone. It looked innocent enough, but to me it felt like a safety net. One wrong move from Monique and this file would be my parachute. One night I heard Monique on the phone. She didn't know I was awake. Her voice carried through the hallway. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. It's fine. Just give me 1 more week." I stopped breathing. She was pacing the kitchen, barefoot, her voice low but too careless. I crept back to bed, laid there all night staring at the ceiling. My hand rested on the latest tea jar like it was a lifeline. I was ready now. No more guessing, no more paranoia. Tomorrow, I'd take the file and the jars, and I'd walk it right to the police station. But first, I needed to call someone who'd take me seriously. Someone with a badge. Someone who didn't think old women just forgot things. And that's how I got in touch with Detective Carla Moreno. Detective Carla Moreno didn't flinch when I told her everything. She didn't smile politely. She didn't cock her head like I was senile or speak in that soft voice folks sometimes use around old people when they think we've lost our grip on things. No. She listened, pen poised, eyes steady. I sat across from her at a quiet table in the back of the police station, my folder on the table between us. Sharon came with me. She didn't say much, just gave the detective a nod and placed her own small envelope of photos beside mine. 2 old women with nothing but a pile of jars, screenshots, and our word. But Carla didn't wave us off. She started flipping through the photos without a word. Trash bags, timestamps. Snapshots of Monique in the silver sedan. The poison box. Sharon even included a photo of the neighbor's bin Monique had been using. Same white bag, same drop time. When Carla picked up one of the mason jars, she held it to the light and tilted it gently. "Labeled and dated," she murmured. "You said you've been saving these for how long?" "Almost 2 weeks," I said. I poured every cup I could without her noticing. She nodded. "This one smells faintly metallic." "I thought so too," I said. "Do you have more at home?" "In a lockbox. Hidden." Carla made a quick note. "We'll send these to the lab immediately. I'll need you to bring the rest in, or we can pick them up." "I can bring them," I said. And just like that, we had someone on our side. She didn't promise miracles, but she took us seriously. And when I gave her a printout of the rat poison product Monique had discarded, the same one with warfarin listed as an active ingredient, Carla just nodded again. "I'm familiar with this," she said. "Common anticoagulant, odorless, tasteless in small doses, slow-acting if diluted. If someone were ingesting it regularly, symptoms might include..." She listed every symptom I'd been experiencing: headaches, dizziness, heart arrhythmia, fatigue, bruising, trouble sleeping. I felt cold all over. Sharon reached under the table and squeezed my hand. Carla said the next steps would be quiet. "We're not kicking in doors just yet. We'll test what you've given us. I'll file an internal risk report so there's a paper trail, and I'll get a digital warrant for Monique's communications. You won't need to do anything different. Just act normal." Act normal? I walked out of that station feeling like I was wearing a mask made of glass. Like if I smiled too hard, it would shatter, and everyone would see the panic underneath. That night, Monique noticed something. "You okay, Mama?" "You've been quiet today." "Just tired," I said. "Didn't sleep well." "Want me to make you some tea?" I hesitated for just a beat. "Of course," I said. "You know me. Can't sleep without it." That seemed to satisfy her. But the next morning, when I opened my bedroom door, the tea wasn't on the nightstand. It was already on the tray table, sitting there, waiting. And Monique? Gone. No knock, no greeting, no hovering like usual. Just the tea. I poured it like always. But this time I felt a twist in my gut. Something had shifted. Carla called that afternoon. "Preliminary results are back," she said. "It's warfarin. Consistent with the rat poison brand you found. Not trace amounts either. Significant over-the-counter levels." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She continued. "I've also submitted for a secondary screen to rule out combinations, but this is enough to move forward. I'm filing a protection alert and requesting temporary monitoring. We've already got eyes on her phone and computer." Nets don't look like nets until they tighten. "She'll know something's wrong," I said. Carla was quiet for a second. "Then we'll let her. Sometimes fear makes people careless." And that's exactly what happened. Within 2 days, Monique began acting different. She stopped bringing me tea, said I was too suspicious lately, started spending more time in her room with the door locked. Andre called once that week, and she answered before I could. When I asked if it was him, she said it was just a telemarketer, but her hands were shaking when she said it. Sharon noticed she wasn't walking out to the trash anymore. No more morning drop-offs, no sedan, just silence. Then she made her next move. A letter arrived from a lawyer, not addressed to me, addressed to a POA office. "Application for emergency guardianship due to mental decline." Attached was a signed doctor's note I'd never seen, falsified, full of lies. She was trying to get full control of my medical care, of the house, of my money. Carla told me to sit tight. "This is what we needed. She's pressing now. That means she's scared." I pressed my hand to the window and watched Monique walk out of the house that evening. She didn't smile. She didn't even look my way. But I looked at her like I already knew how this would end. It's one thing to suspect someone is poisoning you. It's another to know they're planning to bury you while you're still breathing. I'd lived through grief. I'd buried my husband. I'd raised a child on a secretary's paycheck. I knew what pain was. But nothing in my life prepared me for the feeling of reading that letter, the one Monique had sent to the POA office, and realizing she hadn't just been trying to hurt me, she was trying to erase me. Sharon came over that evening with 2 store-bought pies, pretending like it was just another neighborly drop-in. She brought her purse, but inside was a small voice recorder and 2 copies of the lawyer's letter I'd received in the mail. We sat in my kitchen like everything was normal while Monique clacked away on her laptop in the living room. "She's trying to move fast," Sharon said quietly, cutting the pie into perfect slices. "She knows you figured her out." I nodded. "She doesn't bring the tea anymore. She barely speaks to me. And yesterday I saw her snooping through my file cabinet when she thought I was asleep." "She's rattled," Sharon said. "Cornered animals get messy." We spent the next hour going through every drawer in my house, making duplicates of every document she could possibly get her hands on. The house deed, my living will, my old health records, even the church donation receipts. Sharon took photos of everything and backed it up on a thumb drive she wore around her neck. Just in case, she said. By the weekend, Monique made her boldest move yet. A man in a navy suit knocked on the door. A real estate agent. He said he had an appointment for a walkthrough. I stood there in my robe, blinking at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. "No, ma'am. This address was scheduled for a pre-listing evaluation. Mrs. Monique Parker filled out the online form last week. He even showed me the email confirmation." I shut the door on him without another word. And when Monique came home that afternoon, shopping bags in one hand, she didn't even look surprised to see me waiting. "You spoke to a realtor?" I asked. She blinked. "Oh, that. I was just exploring options, Mama, in case you wanted to downsize." "In case I wanted to?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You've said how hard the stairs have been lately. I just thought—" "I haven't said anything of the sort." We stood there in silence, two women on opposite ends of a battlefield, surrounded by grocery bags and lies. The next morning, I called Carla again. "She's trying to sell my house," I said flatly. "She can't," Carla replied. "Not legally. But the fact that she tried is useful. Useful." That word rattled around in my head like a marble in a jar. Carla explained the next steps. A formal inquiry had been opened. They were reviewing Monique's communications, and the data was concerning. Large text chains with her best friend that hinted at my mental decline, voice messages referencing timing things right. But what Carla said next made my skin crawl. We found a voice memo sent to a friend. In her own words, "Once she's in assisted living, the house is ours. This is just speeding it up." It felt like I'd been slapped. Every part of me froze. "Do I need to leave the house?" I asked. "Not yet," Carla said. "We've placed a soft surveillance team nearby, and we're installing a recording device in your hallway near the kitchen. Just act as you have been." But I couldn't. Not fully. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time in 20 years. I stopped eating anything I didn't make myself. I drank only bottled water. I used the guest bathroom instead of the one connected to the hallway. And when I passed Monique in the house, I smiled like everything was normal, like I didn't know what she was planning. But inside, I was planning too. And unlike her, I wasn't rushing. I wanted her to believe she'd won. I wanted her to think I was tired, confused, slipping. And it worked. The next night, I heard her on the phone again. "She's gotten paranoid," she whispered. "Barely talks anymore. I'm just going to file the second half of the POA paperwork and see if the doctor will backdate it. I can't wait months." I recorded the whole thing. Fear talks louder after midnight. I sent it to Carla before sunrise. The trap was set. Now we just had to wait for her to step in it. Detective Carla Moreno didn't speak much when I sent over the voicemail. It was one of those moments where silence said everything. Monique's voice, clear as day, hissing through the crackle of her phone mic. "She's gotten paranoid, barely talks anymore. I'm just going to file the second half of the POA paperwork and see if the doctor will backdate it. I can't wait months." The line went quiet for a few beats after Carla finished playing it. Then, finally, "We've got enough." It wasn't dramatic. She didn't say it like the movies. No slamming of papers or big declarations, just quiet certainty. The kind that tells you things are already in motion. A machine winding up behind the scenes. "Don't change anything," she added. "Keep playing along." Playing along had become second nature to me by now. The pretending, the smiling, the little thank yous that made my skin crawl. But knowing there was a clock ticking behind the scenes made it easier to breathe. Still, Carla's people weren't moving in just yet. They wanted one final thing: context. "We're filing for a digital forensics review," she explained. "We want access to her text history, app usage, browsing records. We need to prove she was researching the poison. It'll hold up better than just jars and hearsay." I nodded on the other end of the line, sitting at my kitchen table, phone cradled to my shoulder as I traced the rim of a teacup I hadn't used in days. "She's already stopped making it," I said. "The tea. She knows." "Which makes her nervous," Carla said. "Nervous people make mistakes." That same day, Monique skipped dinner, said she wasn't feeling well, stayed locked in her room most of the night. I passed by once and saw the light of her phone screen reflecting on the ceiling. She was scrolling, typing, scrolling again. I heard her talking at one point, but her voice was hushed, frantic. I started sleeping with a hammer under my bed. The next morning, Carla showed up in person. She came in plain clothes, no badge, just a large tote bag and a file folder. Monique was out, allegedly at a friend's house across town, so I let Carla in through the side door. We sat in the den. She opened the folder, pulled out a few papers, and handed me one. A screenshot. It was from Monique's phone. Search history. How long does warfarin stay in bloodstream? Does tea hide poison taste? Can warfarin be detected after digestion? Carla watched my face carefully. "This came in last night," she said. "We have full access now." "Search warrant signed 9:42 p.m., Carla added. She flipped to another page. Text messages between Monique and someone saved in her phone as D. Monique. "It's taking too long. She's still up and moving. D. "You said it wouldn't take long. Are you sure she's drinking it?" Monique. "She was, but I think she's onto me." I closed my eyes. Carla placed a hand on the table. "We're prepping charges. Financial fraud, attempted elder abuse. We're moving carefully because we want it to stick. But she's going to jail, Ms. Parker." Ms. Parker. No Lillian. Just the kind of tone officers use when they need you to know it's serious. I nodded, pressing my fingers into the table so I wouldn't shake. "She tried to get me committed," I said. "That letter. She really thought she could take everything and no one would believe me." Carla didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up, walked to the edge of the kitchen, and glanced at the window. Then she turned back to me. "I've seen people do a lot for a house," she said. "But this one? This was personal. She wanted more than your home. She wanted your identity. She wanted to rewrite your ending." I stared down at my hands. "Not today," I whispered. That night, I got a call from Andre. It was late, almost 10 p.m. He sounded tired, like always. Said he was parked at a rest stop in Georgia. "Monique called me earlier," he said. "Said you were being paranoid, that you'd been going through her stuff. She sounded stressed." I didn't speak. "You okay, Ma?" he asked. I swallowed. "Andre, do you trust me?" He paused. "Yeah," he said finally. "Of course I do." "Then come home," I said. "Please, I need you to see it for yourself." There was another long pause. "I'll be there tomorrow night." I hung up and sat there in the dark for a long time. I didn't know if he'd believe me. Not really. But I needed him here when it all came down. Because it was coming. Monique could feel it too. The next morning, she asked me, casually while making toast, if I'd thought about assisted living, just out of the blue, like it was an afterthought. I smiled. "Why would I leave?" I said. "This house suits me just fine." She nodded, but her lips were tight, and I knew then she could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet, just like I'd planned. Andre arrived the next evening just after sunset, 7:28 p.m. I remember, because I was already waiting at the back door. His truck pulled into the driveway with that low rumble I hadn't heard in over 4 months. For a moment, I just stood at the window and watched him sit there in the cab, engine running, staring at the house. Like he already knew something about this place had changed. He stepped out slowly. Monique was in the kitchen when he knocked. She froze for a second. I saw it, just a flicker of surprise. "Hey, babe," she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "You didn't say you'd be in today." "I didn't want to make a big deal," Andre said. "Ma called, sounded off." "Oh," she said. And that was it. Just that, no hug, no welcome home. He walked straight past her and into the living room where I was waiting. "Hi, baby," I said. He hugged me gently, the kind of hug a grown man gives his mother when he doesn't know what else to say. "Can we talk?" I asked. "Just us?" Monique hovered in the doorway. Andre looked between us and said, "Yeah." We sat on the back porch where I'd already placed the folder, the mason jars, the photos, Sharon's documentation, Carla's notes, and the voicemail transcription, every piece of the puzzle. I didn't explain right away. I just let him flip through it, let the silence build like a storm cloud while the sky dimmed behind him. After 20 minutes, he finally spoke. "She poisoned you?" I nodded. "She tried to sell the house?" I nodded again. He rubbed his face with both hands. "What the hell?" "She filed guardianship paperwork," I said. "Tried to take over everything legally, had a doctor write fake reports. I recorded her phone calls. She's been sending voicemails to her friends, bragging." Andre looked sick. "And the police? They've got everything. Carla's leading the case. They're watching her, listening. But they wanted one more piece of undeniable proof, something that can't be explained away." He shook his head slowly. "And you've just been sitting here, acting like everything's normal?" I let out a dry laugh. What choice did I have? Inside the house, Monique's voice filtered through the window. She was on a call again, voice low and sharp, pacing the kitchen. Andre turned his head slightly and listened. His expression hardened. "I want to hear it," he said. "What?" "The voicemail. The one you said broke everything." I pulled out my phone, opened the file, and pressed play. Monique's voice filled the still air. "Once she's in assisted living, the house is ours. This is just speeding it up. Honestly, she doesn't even remember half of what I tell her. She thinks she's still sharp, but it's like talking to a walking ghost. I just need her to keep drinking that tea a little while longer." Andre flinched like he'd been slapped. His jaw clenched. He stood up suddenly and walked back inside without a word. I followed slowly. By the time I got to the hallway, he was standing in the kitchen doorway. Monique was still on the phone. She turned when she saw him. "Everything okay?" she asked. Andre held up the phone. "Who were you talking to in that voicemail?" Her face went blank. "What voicemail?" His voice didn't waver. "The one where you said my mother was a ghost. That you were waiting for the tea to finish the job." She stared at him, eyes flicking to me behind him, then back. "You're misunderstanding something," she said. "That was taken out of context." "Really?" he asked. "Because it sounds pretty clear to me." "I was venting," she said quickly. "I was frustrated. She's been accusing me of things, going through my stuff, turning Sharon against me. You don't know what it's been like." He didn't blink. "You lied to me." "I did it for us," she shouted, voice cracking. "We're drowning in debt, Andre. This house was just sitting here. And your mom, she's been clinging to it like it's her identity. Like we're not trying to build a future." Andre's face didn't change. "Did you poison her?" She hesitated. It wasn't poison. It was a blend. A mix. Supplements. Something to help her relax. She said she couldn't sleep." Andre turned to me. "She ever ask for that?" I shook my head. That's when he called Carla. Right there in the middle of the kitchen with Monique standing 4 feet away. "She's here," he said into the phone. "She's lying. She just admitted to it. Do what you need to do." It all happened fast after that. Unmarked cars, plainclothes officers, a knock on the door. They read the warrant, logged the phone on the counter, and asked for voluntary compliance. Monique didn't resist. She barely said a word. They didn't cuff her, not right away, just asked her to come with them. Carla stepped into the house behind them. She looked at me, then at Andre, and said, "We got the full audio chain. The forensics team pulled every deleted file. The intent is clear." I didn't cry. Not then. I just stood there while Monique was led out, her heels clacking across the tile like punctuation marks at the end of her plan. When the door shut, the silence felt like thunder. Andre stayed behind for 3 more days. We didn't talk about it much. We cleaned out her things. We made copies of everything left, and when he left again, he kissed my forehead and said, "I'm sorry, Ma. I didn't want to believe it." I just hugged him, because it was over. Almost. The courthouse smelled like floor polish and nerves. I hadn't set foot in one since Ray passed, when I had to handle all the estate paperwork. Back then, I was just signing things. Widow's benefits, deed transfers. This time, I was a witness, a survivor. Andre sat beside me on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, his hands clasped tight between his knees. He looked exhausted, not physically, but like he hadn't fully woken up from the nightmare we'd all just lived through. He hadn't shaved. His shirt was wrinkled, but he was here. Carla met us at the elevator, legal pad in one hand, phone in the other. "She's already inside," she said. "Her attorney requested a delay, denied. They'll be starting in about 10 minutes. I nodded. I didn't ask what to expect. I already knew. The doors opened, and we stepped into a space that felt far too formal for the kind of mess we were about to unpack. The judge was a stern-looking woman with gray braids coiled at the nape of her neck, the kind of face that made people sit up straighter. There were only a few people in the gallery, mostly clerks, a couple officers, and one reporter scribbling notes. Monique sat at the defense table in a beige pantsuit that looked borrowed. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, and her expression was somewhere between smug and scared. She didn't look at me. The trial wasn't a full-blown jury situation, just a preliminary hearing to determine charges and set bail. But Carla wanted me there. "They'll try to paint you as confused," she'd warned me. "Your testimony is what shuts that down." So when the clerk called my name, I walked to the stand with my spine straight and my eyes clear. The oath felt heavier than I expected. That the whole truth part echoed like a hymn. The prosecutor was calm, methodical, asked me to explain what I experienced. The tea, the symptoms, the boxes, the trash, Sharon's help, the jars, the folder. When I got to the voicemail, I asked if I could read it myself. "Once she's in assisted living, the house is ours. This is just speeding it up." My voice didn't shake. Neither did the judge's pen. Then came the defense attorney. He stood up slowly, walked toward me with a practiced smile. "Miss Parker, how old are you?" 67. "And how's your memory these days?" "Better than yours, apparently." A few chuckles in the gallery. The judge didn't smile, but she didn't scold me either. "Forgive me," he said, clearing his throat. "But is it possible, just possible, that you misunderstood Monique's intentions? She tried to sell my house while I was still living in it. She claims it was for your benefit, downsizing. She also claimed I asked for tea I never asked for, and supplements I never agreed to." "Do you have any medical training, Miss Parker?" "No, but I know when I'm being poisoned." He shifted his weight. "Let me rephrase. Can you prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Monique intended harm?" I looked straight at Monique. She said she wanted me in a home. She said the house would be theirs, and she asked a doctor to fake a diagnosis. I think that's a pretty big shadow. He backed off after that. Then Carla called Sharon to the stand. Sharon didn't bother with pleasantries. She walked up in her slacks and flats, opened her notebook, and rattled off every date and time she saw Monique dropping trash into someone else's bin. She showed the judge photos, voicemail logs, even a video of Monique slipping an envelope into a man's car. The room was silent when she finished. Then came the kicker. Carla stood up, walked to the judge, and handed her a USB. "Your Honor, this file contains the full, undeleted audio trail of the defendant's conversations, including search histories, deleted texts, and recorded voice memos obtained via legal warrant." She paused. "We recommend holding all charges." The judge plugged it in, listened to the first few seconds of the main file. I watched her eyes narrow. 10 minutes later, Monique's attorney stood and requested a recess. "Denied," said the judge. "I'm moving this forward to a formal arraignment." Then she turned to Monique. "You are being charged with attempted elder abuse, fraud, forgery, obstruction, and unlawful use of controlled substances. Bail is set at $250,000. You are not to contact the victim in any form." Monique's mouth parted slightly, like she might argue. Then she closed it. The bailiff led her out of the courtroom. I sat back down on the bench. Andre reached over and took my hand. He didn't say a word, but I didn't need him to. We were done surviving. We were starting over. The house was quiet again, not the kind of quiet that feels empty, not the kind that echoes with things left unsaid. No, this was the kind of quiet you get after a storm has passed, after everything fragile has already broken and you're left sweeping up what's still yours. Monique was gone. Andre had driven back south for his next route, but not before changing the locks on every door and installing a new security system Sharon picked out herself. The mason jars? Gone. Turned in as evidence. The tea mug? I threw that out the day after court. But what stayed, what I couldn't quite scrub from the air, was the memory of her face. The way Monique used to stand in that doorway every morning, holding a warm mug, like it was an act of love. The way she tilted her head, the fake softness in her voice. I could still hear her say it. "It's herbal, good for circulation, helps with swelling." That was the hardest part, I think. Not the betrayal, not even the attempt on my life, but the performance of it all, the theater. She stood there and smiled while I sipped poison, and she watched me, not to care, not to comfort, but to make sure it was working. I sat in the living room for a long while that first evening after everything. Just me, the old lamp Ray installed himself, and a Bible that hadn't left the end table in 30 years. The air smelled like lemon oil and old wood. Safe. At one point, I got up and walked to the kitchen, reached for a teacup out of habit, then laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but the kind that shakes something loose inside you. A laugh that feels like defiance. I made myself a cup of plain black tea, poured the water, sat at the table, let the steam rise. I didn't flinch, didn't check the trash, didn't test the smell. I drank every drop, and when it was done, I opened the back door, stepped outside, and just stood there. The dogwood tree rustled gently. Somewhere down the block, Sharon's porch light clicked on. The street was quiet. The world hadn't ended. It had just moved on. I thought about Andre, how hard it must have been to accept what he heard in that voicemail, how guilt changes the shape of a man's face. But he showed up. That was what mattered. He showed up. So did Sharon. So did Carla. And so did I. Every time I looked in the mirror and chose not to be afraid, that was a kind of showing up too. Some days are harder than others. Some mornings I still check the stove twice. Still get a flicker of suspicion when someone knocks on the door, but mostly, I'm okay. Better than okay. Alive. The house is still mine. My name is still on the mailbox. And every time I walk past the drawer where I used to keep the tea, I say a little prayer of gratitude and a little prayer of warning. Because if someone ever tries to come for me again, they better understand one thing. I am not soft. I am not confused. And I don't drink from the same cup twice. Not anymore. Monique taught me that. She made me tea every morning. But I'm the one who boiled her plan. They counted on my quiet. They didn't count on my records. Would you have trusted Monique if you were in Miss Lillian's shoes? What would you have done if you found that rat poison box in your own trash? And do you think Andre redeemed himself? Or was it too little, too late? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss one of our daily uploads. And hey, don't keep this one to yourself. Share it with a friend who loves true stories with jaw-dropping twists. Our other videos should be popping up on your screen right about now. Tap 1 to keep watching. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new story.